I'm Fred Faulkner, a husband and father with a passion for marketing and technology. I work at a top 50 consulting agency where I lead alliances and marketing for the digital experience and technology team. On this podcast, I share my thoughts, opinions, and experiences in business and in life. This is my view of the world, according to Fred. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of According to Fred, the podcast. We're doing this one live tonight, folks. It's about 8:30, almost 8:20 on a Thursday night, and we have a great guest on. So I'm excited to bring on. So we have David Armano, who's the Chief PAWS Officer at, well, himself incorporated. Previously, he was a global strategy director at Edelman, known for his strategy expertise and work with major brands such as Hewlett-Packard, Kellogg's, PayPal, United Airlines, Adidas, and Hilton, just to name a few. I've been a big fan of David's for many, many years. I'm super excited to have him on the show. Welcome to According to Fred, the podcast, David Armano.
Hi, Fred. I'm very impressed by the way you did the German enunciation of Adidas.
Adidas. You have to.
Yep,
you have
very
to
impressive.
Right, and it's Porsche, not Porsche. So you have to get some of those correct if they're going to work correctly. So welcome on. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and spending a little bit of time on a Thursday night with me.
Thanks for having me. This is great. And of course we're doing it live. And so I have one of these lights that attached to the back of your laptop with a suction cup, and that fell off. So if the lighting looks off, it's because I went to a backup light. So this is life in the pandemic age.
It is life in the pandemic age, and because it is live, and I am broadcasting to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. We'll see if anyone joins on, and if they do, then we'll interact with them too. And if not, then we'll just kind of run with what we want to do tonight. So
sounds good.
Great. So let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. You are the Chief PAWS Officer at yourself, and that is because I think many of us were shocked, myself included, that earlier this year and around early June, Edelman did some reductions because the pandemic hit, and it cost us a lot of angst. And you were one of about 400 that were kind of Edelman alumni back in June. So how's the pause been going for you now that it's been several months, and what have you been up to?
So I decided to, just because it was out in the public, everyone knew really what was happening. I just decided to be really transparent about it. That's why I updated my LinkedIn profile with what was going on. It was pretty straightforward. COVID happened. I ended up getting cut. It does happen in any industry. We had held on for a while. And so what was interesting about it for me was that it's the first time I've ever gone through it, which is to be, I think, at the stage in my career, sort of in the agency space, and you're pretty advanced. I can consider myself fortunate, but also in the same breath, it was new terrain for me. So I took some time off to just basically catch my breath, absorb everything that was going on. It is definitely a journey when you go from moving at company speed and agency speed. And I had projects right up until the end, and then you have to basically reassess and think about what you're going to do next. But I did give myself some time to sort of take a step back and just think about what I wanted to do next. But before I got to that point, I just took some time. And so hopped in my car, took my son with me. We went on a road trip to go see my family and some friends, and just sort of catch up with life before leaning back in again.
And I think that's super important to do. You pretty much laid it out there in that early blog post that the stress of being part of any reduction in force, or however you want to kind of call it, you could jump back in and say, I have to get back to work right away. I think it's important, even in this whole world of now, a lot of people talk about mental health and how are we adjusting to just now work from home life and just a whole slew of things. having the ability to take a pause and say, I'm going to go do some finding, some just walk away from stuff. I think the most important thing that I saw that made me chuckle, but it was one of those things that I think is super important was you said like work email disappeared. Like all of a sudden, like right that day, like when work email.
Oh, that was weird. That was so
like, what do I do with myself now? Right?
I found myself like going to my phone and then looking for the mail icon, and then realized I don't have that.
Right.
So Gmail is going to have to do for now.
Right. And you're like, well, what am I, when you're constantly in this groove of like, client this, work related that, approving whatever it might be, even simple things like timesheets, like that all just goes away. And you're like, well, and it's such an identity, right? Work is such a big part of our own identity and who we are. And when you have this moment to take a pause, it gives you a moment to really think like, what am I going to do next? And what's more important to me and what I want to do. Yeah. So blessing in disguise, maybe not, I don't know. But getting back into the space and it's important as well, but doing something that's fulfilling, I think is super important at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, just to be clear, I had, it's a bit of an overused word, but I had the privilege of actually being able to, I'm not going to go into details, but one of the things that many of us, not all of us, but many of us in the white collar world enjoy that most people don't is we could actually take a little time before jumping right back in. And so that's something that I didn't take lightly. Luckily I was able to do it for a little while. And then I had to, as soon as summer was over, I had to pretty much, figure out. And I was I was doing some of that even, behind the scenes while summer, but I gave myself a little bit of time, at least a few weeks at minimum to really just sort of decompress and just reunite with my family and friends. And my son actually was going through some personal stuff, and he went from living with his mom to living with me. So it was sort of like we were both in transition. It was like the dad and son version of Thelma and Louise, except we didn't go off the cliff. We just went to the East Coast.
Kept driving. Awesome. Well, of course, it's hard to let go of everything, right? So I can imagine that you were doing some stuff behind the scenes because it's who we are.
Yeah,
it's nature, right? You just can't turn it off.
Yeah.
For sure. So I love the fact that you kind of deemed it as chief pause officer. And I think that got a little like notoriety in the sense of like people who in your network, they were obviously a lot of outpouring of like support for you. But one of the things that I've always admired about you in general, because I follow you on Twitter and certainly, we've had discussions in the past, but the creativity that you have, there are just some things that you pontificate that I just admire because I would never think of what to do in those situations. And I'm going to use this most recent thing that happened this week as an example of this. So Twitter came out with fleets, right? Their fleeting moments, stories version of Instagram, Snapchat iteration. And one of the tweets that you put out with this was a fleet haiku, which is the first fickle fleet. Every little bird wants to tweet a little nest of code. I read it. I laughed my butt off because I'm like, this is hilarious. Not only because, it's a haiku, but it's one of those things that just doesn't go through my head when I think of like new things like this. So I guess the question to you is, where's the creativity in your life come from? And how does that where do you even get the idea of deciding to come up with a Twitter haiku on fleets as something that you're going to publish out online?
I mean, it's Twitter in a lot of ways, not in all ways. I mean, I definitely use it to network, use it for business purposes, but one of the ways I do use it is like for myself, and that's even how blogging started, like as a just a form of expression, a way to have fun. I love hearing the feedback because it's nice to know that people still read words, like in the age of TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat, where it's such a visual. I mean, look what we're doing now. It's such a visual medium, and the world is moving toward short form video and algorithms. So it's nice to know in that world that the the written word can still evoke something. But I don't know where I think the creativity probably was always there. I remember when I was in college, deciding to actually like go to a design school and like actually put whatever creative talent I had to use professionally. And I'm really fortunate because that's how I started my career. I started as a visual designer and then a creative director, and then it turned into strategy. And then through that, I was always like learning the ways of business, and then business became a part of it. So for me, a lot of it's natural. A lot of it's just sort of keep that muscle, that sort of, creative muscle. I don't take myself too seriously. So the Twitter haiku is just, it's just part of my personality. I just don't take myself too seriously.
That's good. And no one of us should take ourselves too seriously, because maybe more in today's age than anything else, I think we just need to be humble about what's kind of going on in the world. But to be, creative, I think I always find creativity as an inspiration for just doing something different, right? We're so stuck in our norms, and to get something that could be creative and explore that, whether it's through Twitter or through music, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and some other kind of avenues. Creativity, I think, is a big part of our lives, and should be, no matter where our foundation kind of comes from.
Well, I'm a big advocate of creativity. I always have been, and one of the misnomers about being, I think if strategists are really honest, it's a different type of creativity, which actually for me, I probably always have been, or at least in my professional life, because while I started off as a visual or as a graphic designer, there was always some structure to that, and then even evolving as a creative director, I wasn't like an advertising creative director where I was like writing ads. I was more of a creative director who started with like website design and then user experience. So there was always a functionality factor that went sort of along with the creativity, more so than kind of like the stereotypical creativity that most people think of, where you're just out there and everything's loud and colorful, and you're a personality, or maybe even like a little unstable or unpredictable. That's not the type of creativity that sort of I relate to.
No, that's interesting. Let's talk about the background. You said visual and web, which I have visual. I have web background. Did a lot of work in web. Not so web design, but I managed some big websites for some previous companies I've worked with. But as we get into kind of like user experience, creativity, customer experience, those are all things that are kind of intertwined together. I was doing a little research before we talk about the podcast, and so I'm going to bring up something from the past, a little farther in the past, but I find it fascinating because I wonder. Well, I think there's some truth to it still today. So in 2013, you published a slide share, which I found, called "The Lines Have Blurred. We're all marketers now," which are 100% true. Everyone's a marketer in their organization because everyone has some responsibility for some level of customer experience.
Well, influencer marketing, right? That was basically the precursor when, just like you're doing with podcasts, when some of us were sort of basically publishing, which was the precursor to influencer marketing. That was sort of my head went there, which is, well, everybody's basically now just a marketer. They're marketing themselves by doing self-publishing. And now look at where the world is. I mean, influencer marketing is, it's basically now just like part of the future of advertising, and the dollars continue to flow there.
Absolutely, because, well, one, everyone's an influencer. I mean, I think there's a level of influencer marketing that there's always going to be the ones that have the biggest follower base, or maybe the one that's got the niche follower base, right? We don't think the biggest ones that are out. No one wants to be the next. You don't have to be the next Kardashian to be an influencer. There's influencers at every level, and the reality is we're all influencers in our own. There's influencers in all of our lives today, because you think about when you have a problem, who do you want to go ask? Do you want to go ask who's the most person you first think of when you have a problem you want to go to? That's an influencer on yourself. But when it comes to big brands, they certainly want to find the ones going to have the right alignment to. It's like the spokesperson, right? It's the new spokesperson for brands today in many cases. Totally. But one of the things you talked about in that kind of slide share was about the bright, shiny objects, and how all marketers are going to bright, shiny objects, whether you want to call it influencer marketing or short form video. as a marketers today, have we really changed that? That's 2013. That's 7 years ago. Like, are we still in the bright, shiny object phase of the world as marketers?
That's a good question. I think yes and no. So I think yes, in the sense that many marketers I think that marketers still look for shortcuts. And so, it always happens. It's like every couple of months, something breaks through, and then every marketer goes, "I want one of those." So one of the more recent ones was I forgot the gentleman's name, but the ocean spray guy, right?
Oh, right. The guy with the was on the one wheel riding down the road or whatever it was.
Yeah. And so, you see what's interesting is you see marketers trying to jump on the bandwagon, and it was fun. It was fun to see, like, when you become an old fogey in marketing, which is what I am. You just see the patterns repeat themselves. So all the next wave of marketers, the up and coming marketers are all like, ocean spray has to do something, and I'm like, I've seen this before, and that's not really right. And the funny thing, that there was such a great story behind that, because what happened was that gentleman's car broke down, and then he was like, on it. See, you don't even know that, right? I've read a story about it over the weekend, and after I'd read it on Monday, the day after I read the story, I tweeted out to Ford. And this is before actually Ocean Spray, the CEO, went and surprised the guy with a car. This was about 2 days before that. And I tweeted out to Ford. I'm like, hey, this guy could use a car. And sure enough, what was happening while like people in the echo chamber were saying like brands have to like Ocean Spray should do something. Well, Ocean Spray was, and you'll appreciate this working in communications. Like, they were working with their CEO, and they were absolutely right. They recognized that we're at a moment in time where one of the reasons why people related to that guy was like, the story was so compelling, and the guy's just being super chill at the most stressed out time probably in modern history.
Right.
And it was like just so refreshing to see that. And then if you knew his backstory, it makes it even more compelling. So clearly they did their homework, and I think they realized, appropriately so, that we're living in an age where a lot of people are just living paycheck to paycheck. And that was that guy's story. And then they decided to do something about it. So rather than, just turning it into a moment, they did that. It was smart, like PR. It was smart marketing, but they also got the guy a vehicle and helped him out. And that was the absolute right. And it was funny to watch the marketing community like be shocked that they actually responded that way. And I was like, no, that was the exact right response. And this is why I tweeted Ford. I was like, you should look into this, because this guy actually needs a car, and that would be the right thing to do. It'd be a great thing to do if you want to try to do something worth doing, and in the process maybe have a little halo for your brand. That's the right way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that I never heard the story that his car broke down, I just saw that everyone started to pick up on this whole guy with Ocean Spray with the fun, music in the background. I think it's a Stevie Nicks,
Fleetwood Mac.
So, and clearly people got encouraged and invigorated by that. But the fact that there's a whole backstory behind that, which I should have known, but didn't. That Ford did something about that. I mean, did Ford get recognized? I mean, did people recognize that Ford jumped in and did something with that?
No, they didn't. I was actually tweeting to them that they should. So what happened was the CEO of Ocean Spray.
Okay.
And probably his communications team, in a couple of days, basically came down, paid a visit to the guy, surprised him with a new vehicle full of Ocean Spray in the back. And then made hay with it, and as they should. And the guy was genuinely happy and just got a car out of it. And obviously now he has been in commercials, I think.
Right. It's like you take the flash in the pan, and you take your 15 minutes of fame when you can get it, for sure.
Yeah. And good for him.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In that slide share, you also talked about how to defeat the shiny object syndrome. And this is the part that I wanted to kind of get to, which is, I think, is still very relevant today, which is to beat the remedy for the shiny object syndrome is empathy, understanding, and awareness. I don't know of any other three words. This is written in 2007, and this is now 2020. This is just an area that I think those are three words that are still so relevant today in marketing and so relevant today in business. Would you agree with that?
I do. And so, professional update, and I'm not really broadly announcing it, but I'll share it on here. I'm doing some work with a startup called Suzy. And
right.
the thing about so the cool thing about that, so what Suzy is, it's a software platform where you can do, so if you're a marketer, if you're a consumer research a professional, if you're a researcher, if you're working the R&D group in a company, you can very quickly do quantitative or qualitative research with the community through this software, and it's very rapid and it's very real time. And so you can basically just get a better understanding of the consumer. You can target, like, so you can say, I want to talk to moms of 2 kids who live in this area with this income, and go shopping twice a week and have a dog and a cat. Like, you can get that specific. And so what's cool about that, the reason why I bring that up, so I'm basically working with them on a contract basis as an interim CMO. But what got me excited to want to work with them is that it's in the pursuit of what they talk about as human understanding, which is exactly those 3 things, right? It is, you develop empathy when you have a better understanding of your consumer. So I think the importance of really understanding your consumer at a human level is more important than ever. And I used to think that you could get that through social media, and I don't believe that anymore. Because of social media, no, I don't. Because as social media has matured, everyone's got an agenda, everyone's an activist, and you're not getting representation of your sort of everyday consumer. You're getting the loudest opinions out there, and so they're not accurate, right? I mean, look at politics and how politics. Look at social media and politics, and then look at election results. I think that proper research, where you use research methods, and Suzy's just a platform that happens to be an updated version of that, is the way to go. Plus, behavioral things like honestly, probably one of the best data sources in the world is Google, but no one's getting to that data besides Google. So, so basically, I think you've got
that information out. Hold on, let me pull up an API on that. Just completely undermine our completely ad platform while we're doing it too. So
I think you have, like, basically you have anthropology, you have Google, and then you have consumer research, or you have research, and those are the 3 tools that you have to get that that level of empathy and understanding.
That's first of all, I think that the Suzy platform sounds amazing. I have not personally used it, but anything that is disrupting kind of the old school guard, I think is still it's the world of MarTech these days. I mean, just to kind of take a step aside from the kind of empathy kind of conversation, but I mean, disruption is happening all over the place, right? I mean,
I'm really excited. That's exactly what they're doing. And I'd known Matt Britton, who's the founder, for years. I mean, he was an agency player, and then he obviously made the switch over. And you and I were talking about South by Southwest earlier. So that's where he demoed it to me years ago. And I've always thought he's brilliant, and I thought his pivot to this model was brilliant. But when he showed me the software, I was like, okay, this seems a little partially built at this point, which it was. This is years ago.
Sure.
And then when we had talked recently and he showed it to me, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was blown away. He had taken that vision, and it was really being built out properly. And there's so much potential in the space.
I think, software as a service, the idea of reinventing these monolithic, beholden enterprise solutions into more nimble, cloud ready, cloud first, just agile solutions I mean, there's a reason why the MarTech 5,000 is really 8,000 companies on it, and why there's new ones popping up every day, and why ones are getting acquired. I mean, shoot, the most recent one that, of acquisition of just stuff in general, Adobe is dropping 1.5 billion for, Workfront, and you and I, we met, we know each other from a lot of places, but, we were both part of the Adobe Insider program a number of years ago, where they've, dropped, 4.5 billion for like Marketo, and another 1.5 billion for Magento. And I mean, anything Adobe buys apparently is $1 billion next to it. But that was one of their gaps, is the workflow perspective, and so they're buying things up. But really, the the MarTech space is just crazy right now. I mean, it's just expanding, contrasting, and companies need that type of stuff to keep them agile, because when you have big ones, the big companies that can't move at the speed of light, they move at the speed of an aircraft carrier that takes 150 miles to turn left. They're going to get beat out if they're not getting agile with those types of solutions that are out there.
Yep. And I also like, I mean, I don't know exactly when I landed on your radar, but I had spent a short amount of time it was at the time Dotchis Group, which was Jeff Dotchis, who's one of the co-founders of Razorfish. Yep. He had started up a business, and I was there for about 8 months, and I decided it wasn't for me. And one of the things I thought was interesting, one of the things that I learned was he and that team weren't fully committed to, is it software or is it service or is it some combination? And I like what Matt has done to like very cleanly at least start with the software as like the thing.
Right.
And if it does pick on other things, like that's always going to be the core. And really that is like the model's very clear and the space is very clear. It's a very defined space that is ripe for disruption. It's a very clear offering. And so to me, that's a compelling value proposition, and the customers love it. I mean, they're working with very large organizations, and they go direct to those, to those companies, the Mondelez's of the world, and Microsoft, and you name it.
And there's something to be said about simplicity, customer focused software and services and solutions that are out there. Those that understand their customers at their core or know who they're trying to go after and make the solution focused on them versus something they think is out there and it's not, they're doing it for themselves, maybe for what the challenge really is, or they kind of lose their way along the way. Those are the companies the ones that are focused on the customer, the ones that are winning at the end of the day.
Yep. The focus on
is focused on what is going to make the customer happy, what's going to, and you can't make every customer happy, but certainly the ones that are, with the customer first in mind, that's important to have in 2020, 2021. Not a new concept, but it's amazing at how many companies will produce product services or, solutions that maybe I'll call it revenue first versus customer first. Mm-hmm. Look at the way that they can, we're going to make some more money doing that. It's like, but is that what the customer wants or needs? Or are you just trying to squeeze us for more revenue at the end of the day? And I can look at you, anyone, in Mountain View, at that perspective, today's age, from that. Okay. So I'm going to get down to a question here, brass tacks. What the hell's going on in social media these days? Like, are these platforms anywhere near what we think they can and should be? Is the attention for brand's attention to want to use them and create engagement? Is it just out this, no one knows what the hell they're doing, or everyone knows what the hell they're doing, or it's everything in between?
Well, I mean, we can dedicate three shows to this topic. Like I'm sure, but look, I was happy to see that The Social Dilemma on Netflix was made. And as someone who understands marketing, as someone who understands communications, as someone who understands how to tell a compelling story, even if it's manipulative, which that Netflix special was, it was actually the television equivalent of what social media does, like that with the algorithm. But I felt I was like good because it needed to be put out there, because I think that there are so many so many unintended consequences of social media have come to pass. I am not of the school of like, I'm still on Facebook, but having two boys that are Gen Z and that are 18 and 20, and for the past 6 or 7 years, I've been drilling into their heads that they've got to be vigilant with, basically keeping their sanity as they engage in a social media world. I mean, I am on the front lines as a parent of older teens, and I think you have younger kids, so you're going to be there in a few years. Oh,
I'm dreading the day when, I fight a little bit, not fight. I mean, there's a little bit that goes on now with, hey, can I we have VR. My older son's big into VR, and he's, like, hey, can I get like this, this app that this app that lets you, it's called Rec Room. I'm like, okay, so what does it do? It's like, well, it lets you engage with other people. I'm like, well, you don't have any other friends that have VR, so who are you going to engage with? Who are you going to talk to? It's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, see, that's a little bit of, we didn't talk through that,
Yeah. It only gets worse.
Yeah.
So I was glad to see Netflix, with almost like in a propaganda like way, because sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. I think that ultimately, even though it was overly dramatized, that there was truth, because again, I see it, up close and personal. I mean, my younger son has to periodically uninstall apps because to his credit, and hopefully it's related to my parental coaching, he realizes it's not good for him. But honestly, every time he does something like that, Fred, I think about the teen that doesn't, just doesn't have the wherewithal to even understand how bad it is for them, and they just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's just one slice of it. We haven't even gotten into like, the political aspect or the things that go on in other countries where like people get incited. I mean, so it's the social media and big tech are the most powerful advancements in technology, and so we're getting all the bad that comes with the good. They're just, we've never seen anything like this.
We haven't, and I find myself more one, got to be really clear with my kids what is right, what's wrong. Like, we pretty much say, like, luckily my older son, who's now 13, hasn't come and said like, hey, I want to get on Facebook. Like, he knows like 13 is like the threshold to get like legally on these apps, which we know a lot of his friends, people we know, aren't. They're letting their kids get on stuff way before they're technically supposed to. And luckily he hasn't said anything, but like my wife and I are just, we need to be, like you said, vigilant. Like what is this going to do? And we even see the impact in our lives. It's, I'm pretty good at setting limits on the apps that I tend to scroll through the most. I use the digital well-being component, right? Where I limit, like, I only get 45 minutes on Facebook a day on my phone. I only get, an hour on Twitter. I only get an hour on LinkedIn, and I do limits, YouTube, and I will Instagram. Like, I will set those limits. Now, there's days I'll override it, because I got into news stories on, whatever day.
Right.
But it's important for me to like have that app gray out, where it's like, you can't get back on this thing for the infinite scroll, and you can't get now, you just go to the next one. But the point being is that at least I'm consciously trying to decide how much I want my life to be there.
Look at what you just talked about. Look at all the safeguards you place. You're a grown adult.
Right.
So think about like someone who's like, their mind is being formed and they're exposed to all that. And by the way, it's more potent. Like, you're a grown adult trying to limit your time on Facebook. Meanwhile, TikTok is out there, which is like, if Facebook is alcohol, like TikTok is like, crack cocaine, right?
Oh,
in terms of the potency of the algorithm and the type of the content that's out there. So it's tough. I mean, and I get it. I'm sure like, I'm not on TikTok, and I'm sure there's amazing content that would probably make me laugh and cry.
Yep.
But I made a conscious decision that like, look, like I can't spend my whole life consuming content. And one thing that I feel like is happening in society, like across all levels, is that moderation is just going away. Like, you're either an extreme consumer or you're an extreme creator. Even if you're a creator that hasn't like made the big bucks yet, like, you've seen this, to go back to the point of influencer marketing. You have so many people out there that their aspiration is to be a creator, and they're just creating that content. They're obsessing over the likes and the links and the follows and the audiences they're creating, and like, what they can get, potentially as a full-time creator. So they're just obsessively creating. Then you've got people obsessively consuming. And so where's the in-between those two things? Right.
Yeah, no. And it's the in-between is, you have to make a conscious decision of what you're going to do, because the apps aren't going to do it for you.
Right.
Your phone's not going to do it for you. Yeah. Parents aren't going to do it for you. Like, you have to make the conscious decision that you're going to do it for yourself. And you're right. Like, I can spend my time scrolling through my feed, or I can spend time writing a blog post or recording a podcast or doing an interview or, going into my garage and, crafting something in my, woodworking or whatever, kind of the other stuff, or going for a run or exercising. Like, everything's about choices, right? I was 168 hours in a week. How are you going to use it? You have X amount of time sleeping, eating, commuting, whatever. Like, go through it. I made my kids go through the exercise. Like, how long are you on Xbox on any given day? How long are you on your phone any given day? Okay, now multiply it times 7. And in fact, on weekends, double what you're saying, because that's what it probably is. And again, anyone could say parenting, like, hey, don't let your kids be on Xbox that long or on their phones. Okay, yeah, that's a whole other podcast. But making them consciously write it down. Like, how are you spending your time?
Yeah, totally.
Healthy?
And like, the thing about a lot of this technology that makes it so difficult is that it's been the speed. Like, we've had basically barely a decade to adapt to this.
Yep.
This specifically. So take fast food, for example, where like portions in the 70s were probably less than half the size than they are today. But that was the 70s. So we had almost half a century to basically adapt to the fact that, like,
right.
Okay, this is the reality now, and like, you got to moderate that. Otherwise, you're gonna have all kinds of problems. So we had all those years, and it happened gradually. So it didn't in one way it snuck up on us, but in the other way we kind of knew it was happening, and so like we had time to be like, that's going to be a splurge. You can't eat like that all the time, and you got to be careful. But we didn't have that luxury with technology. It was like,
no, it was here. It accelerates. It's, we as marketers know how fast that pace comes into play, and more importantly, the influences that come off of it. I mean, you mentioned earlier, and we certainly know all the creepy shit on the internet. We know how it works. We know how the algorithms are punching people into that, and they're purposely not letting consumers be aware, right? They're caught off guard for a reason, because it's the attention that we all crave. It's the next lead, it's the next customer, it's the next sale that we're trying to get. Is why marketers are, it's a very interesting time for marketing at the moment. I think we've seen more in the last 5 years we've seen in the last 75 years. I mean, we really have. I mean, it used to be the yellow pages and a commercial on 2, 5, or 7, and maybe a magazine ad. And the fact that, like, I literally, sitting in COVID and sitting at home looking, I'm going to go look at Standing Desk, and then every social platform I have, every third post is about Standing Desk from some Standing Desk company. I know how that works. I know all the beacons that are out there and all the ad, technology, that ad tech that's out there. But a lot of consumers, they get freaked out by that. It's like, how do I say something in a conversation? My phone picks it up and then it moves through. I'm like, well, one, you probably downloaded an app for free that you don't realize what it's actually really doing. So you clicked accept, and then there's how it actually works, because that's how they make money. They sell your data and they make all that happen. And you're saying, yes, go ahead, use my mic, have access to my contacts. Why in the world does Candy Crush need access to your contacts? Like, why do they need access to your phone? Why do they need access to your microphone? I'm not saying that Candy Crush does, but you know what I'm saying? It's because everyone's in this. If it's free, then it's okay. There's nothing that's ever free. You are being sold time and time again by free.
Yeah, marketers have gotten dreadfully efficient on the digital side.
That's a great way of describing it. Dreadfully efficient. That is for sure. For sure. Okay, let's shift into something else. So outside of work, you have a number of passions. One, I know you ride a motorcycle. Is it an Indian motorcycle? Is that right? Or what's your brand?
But I don't take offense that you think it's an Indian, because it's a Road King classic, and it's a very kind of like old school looking motorcycle, which I've always been partial to. So that's all good. And I've ridden for a long time. I think I've almost 20 years now, and luckily all safe, thankfully. So I do love it. That's a great stress reliever. It's interesting how it's so less culturally relevant. Like, Harley's struggling, and the younger
Electric
generation.
bikes now, apparently. They said the motorcycle, they're going to go electric bikes with that new was it S1 or whatever it's called. These, I forget who they're pairing up with, but that.
Well, that show on HBO with Ewan McGregor that I haven't seen yet is brilliant in at least an effort to, that's the type of thing that a brand like that really, like, they have got to infiltrate culture to just change people's attitudes. I don't know. I mean, like, it could come back. It's hard to say. It seems like motorcycling gave people a sense of freedom that I think, is like largely replaced by a lot of the technologies today. I think people feel like that they have their freedom through digital experiences, and so why do you need to be out in the elements? And there's other reasons, but that's one of the things I like to do. I like to spend time outdoors. I try to hike. I used to enjoy going to the gym, but that's been kind of challenging. I've been trying to adapt to life without a gym, and I started the whole Peloton thing, which is a pretty great experience, I have to say.
Really? I'm not a Peloton rider. I know a lot of friends that have it. They swear by it. I was an Orange Theory guy for a while, and the gyms are still open, but I've decided I'm not going back to those for the moment.
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, we have equipment in our house that, treadmill and some other stuff in the basement, but the Peloton thing, I mean, what is it for you? Is it the live experience that you can join a live class, or what is the hook for you at Peloton? I'm curious.
Okay, so what got me is definitely not someone who ever saw getting into, and I'm not super into it, but I find the leaderboard, which is funny because they try to discourage you. Like, I compete with people in the leaderboard, so I'm probably not the best representative of like what Peloton is supposed to be, but it's motivating to me. It's like, sure. That's the thing. I'm like,
gamification, like anything else. It's right. That's the thing. Like, you want to have that motivation. Gamification is an easy thing to do.
They never want to get caught saying it. So yeah, I compete with people on the leaderboard, and I like it when I can, like, I see somebody and I catch up to them, and if I can pass them, like, it's an interaction, and I don't feel like I'm doing it alone, and people will high five you and you high five them back. And so that part of it, I think, is pretty compelling. I haven't done the live, which is actually probably that intensified, because what you can do is you could do a recorded one, and then there's two versions of a leaderboard. One is an all-time, so it's basically like you can see how you're ranking up with anybody who's ever taken that ride. The other is there might be 20 or 30 or 40 people doing that ride with you, even though it's pre-recorded. And so that's the thing that I go for. I'm like, oh, how many people are in this ride? Oh, there's 20 people. And then I want to see if I can compete with them.
Right. Sure. Right. Yeah. If it's 20 versus 100, maybe it's a little easier to think about competing, versus like the masses that are out there. Right. So
I actually would you have better odds if there's more, but I haven't had the foresight. I'm more of an on-demand person. I think if you're a schedule person, you're like, I'm going to be in a live class. I actually think that the live, even though I haven't done it yet, is probably that intensified, because the live classes are hundreds of people.
Yeah. And I know people who like specific trainers. They're like, I like Carly. I don't know. I'm just making it up. Right. But they're, or Jim or whoever, like they've liked their intensity. It's like they're the personal trainer coach, right? You get the ones you like because they're in your face. There's some that are more aggressive. There's some that are more like inspiring, that type of stuff. There's definitely, I know some friends that are like, oh yeah, did you join?
If you do the spinning thing, that way you just described it, is like they would want to go for like certain classes, certain instructors. For me, it's like I go like genre of music, the time frame, like, do I want a 20 minutes? Do I want a 30 minutes? Do I want a 45? Like, what can I handle today? What do I have time for? And then and how many people are in that session? Like, can I try to get a session where there's 20 or 30 people actually in it, so it's going to be interesting?
Right.
Versus I'm just sitting there cranking it out.
Yep. Yeah.
And getting no feedback, really.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how like go on the treadmill. I'm like, or go outside, or they're definitely like, I've explored rowing machines, and it's like, do you get the ones where it's like the live classes, or do you get the one where it's got programs where you can still get the leaderboard and some of the other kind of inspiration from it? I don't know what to do. So
it's hard, even with I gotta say, even with the leaderboard, like it is so hard when you're in the same space. I get up, I'm like, is this going to be the morning? Nope.
Yeah.
And then what happens is the day ends, and then I'm like, okay, I have the window before dinner.
Right.
And it's like 50-50 for me. It's like, or maybe more than 50-50, but like a lot of the time I'm like, and then a good amount of the time I'm like, nope, like tonight I just did it. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm throwing a hat on. I don't care if I'm,
Yeah.
Like everybody's casual on camera these days. So I'm just going to get my work out.
Very true. I didn't request a dress code for this one. So, the other thing you're into is music, because I've seen you post a couple riffs and stuff on Twitter and others. So you have it's Gretsch, right? You have a Gretsch guitar.
I do.
Besides,
I have fooled people into thinking that I can play, when in reality,
me too. I have my ladies over here in the corner. I got an acoustic electric and 2 electric guitars. So, and I'm an 20-year self-taught guy that knows about like 3 songs but just likes to. But I like guitar. I mean, I played saxophone in a past life and stuff, but the guitar is just. It's about back and forth when we were getting ready for this podcast. But yes, rock is dying. That is true. It's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I mean, it really and there's some interesting rock out there that's under the radar that you might like. Every once in a while I hear a band, I'm like, ooh, but they never continue past, one song maybe.
Right. Or they're never going to be more than the opening band, right? They're not going to get to the big leagues. There's a band, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're local here in Chicago. You and I are both here in Chicagoland area.
Yep.
So, Hailstorm, you heard of them?
No, I haven't heard Hailstorm.
So they open up for Alice Cooper. So but they're a younger band, but they opened up for Alice Cooper. I saw them last year. Check them out. When it comes to rock and heavy, and they have an amazing lead singer. Her name is Lizzie Hale. Her and her brother started the band, but it's LZZY. So don't drop the I there, but fantastic. I think right up your alley. Like if you're into the rock, definitely recommend checking out.
Okay. Well, Hailstorm. The last concert I saw, and had I known it was going to be the last concert before, pandemic palooza, was Social Distortion, which is probably like in my top 3 favorite rock bands, and it was at the theater that's right off the lake. I forget the name of it. And it was awesome. It was a great show. And I was like, it was funny, I was thinking about it, like when the pandemic started ramping up, I was like, oh man, I don't know when I'll see a show again. And I thought, last show that I saw, Social Distortion. And I at least felt good that I saw one of my favorite bands live before like the world turned inside out.
Yep. So, all right. So here's what we're going to do. What I try and do on these podcasts is towards the end, which I think we're, had a great conversation, but I want to do a speed round with you, which is gonna be all about music. So there's about this or that. Okay, so we'll see what stories come out of it. Okay, so speed round, and I wish I had some great sound effect for it, but I don't. So speed round, here we go. Les Paul or Stratocaster, even though I know you have a Gretsch.
Les Paul.
Okay. I have a Stratocaster, and I have an Epiphone Les Paul knockoff. So I kind of have both, but
and Les Paul mainly because I think it looks cooler.
But they're heavy guitars. That is like, I don't know if you've ever held one, but like it is.
They have character. I mean, so I'm going off of that matches my aesthetic, but I like the Les Paul sound too.
Yeah. Okay. AC/DC or Metallica? Yeah. What's that?
That's a hard choice.
I know. I tried. I dug a little deep on these. But I also guessing really hard.
I mean, by a super slim margin, I might have to go AC/DC purely from, I think there's volume there that I could get into more. Like Metallica, at the end of the day, it's going to probably be a couple of albums.
Yeah.
And I like some of the older Metallica. I
actually like all the older Metallica. It's the newer stuff that I can't quite get into.
Yeah, like when they got like Ride the Lightning, and then Justice for All, and then once they got into the harder rock. Like ironically, it was weird. Like they were like speed metal.
Yep.
Early on, then it was like this more melodic metal, which is the time like the basically the 80s, the early 80s,
right?
And then they kind of got into like more of like a hard rock, which is the same genre as AC/DC, ironically, but I didn't like when Metallica did that genre.
Right.
I didn't like it.
Yeah. So AC/DC dropped a new album on Friday. Have you listened to it yet?
No, that's right. I heard about it though. Okay, gotta give that a listen.
So I'm not doing a spoil. I've been listening to it. I thought maybe you had, so we would talk about it, but that's all right. It is, the only thing I will say from a review standpoint is that it has AC/DC sound. I don't know if I've heard the track that, you think you get out of, use of the one or two that are like the track that come out of, I don't know if I've heard the track yet.
Okay.
But it's good. I mean, I'm glad to hear, I forget the lead singer. I'm horrible at this. I should know the lead singer's name of AC/DC. That they came back to sing this one, but it's an AC/DC album, which is exactly what we need right now. If there's anything in 2020 that we need an AC/DC album.
I'm be giving it a listen for sure.
That sounds like AC/DC.
Yeah.
Okay. Jimi Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen?
Oh, definitely Hendrix.
Okay. Follow up. Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan?
I do like Stevie Ray.
Stevie's good.
That's so tough. I might say Stevie Ray because I just listened to a song recently, and he was just so good, and he just had, as good as Hendrix is, when you listen to Hendrix, it's very dated, and like for some reason you listen to Stevie Ray and it feels fresh. And it feels timeless. And right. I think that I tend to like that a little bit more than like you really feel like Hendrix was a groundbreaker, and
absolutely
and it sounds like psychedelic, sounds like the psychedelic genre that he created, but it's very specific. And Stevie Ray could evoke some. He's covered Hendrix, and it sounds amazing.
Yep.
And
Voodoo Child and
yeah. I mean, here's a good example, like Voodoo Child, like Stevie Ray's version of Voodoo Child. I mean, this is probably heresy, but it's better than Hendrix's version of Voodoo Child.
Damn near close. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's probably heresy. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
All right, couple more. Lives or clubs?
Wait, what was the first one?
So seeing a show in a live in an arena or live in a club?
Oh, club. I mean, look at what I'm wearing.
CBGB.
And I saw Social Distortion here.
Oh.
So I got a cool story because I got my kids into them for a hot minute when they were like impressionable, and then you'll also experience this when your kids get older. But so I saw Social Distortion at CBGB in New York when I was going to Pratt, and amazing show. It was like they were like really becoming a thing, and the show was amazing, and it was CBGB. So I've taken my boys to see them actually on the West Coast, and they like I said, they got into them for a hot minute. So I was looking up videos on YouTube, and I found them playing at CBGB, and I was like, look, I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, is this? I wonder, like, if they played a few shows there. I'm like, this can't be the show that I saw. And then, oh yeah, I found myself in the audience. I found the college. Oh yeah, because it was that small, so it's a club. Right. It's tiny, and
I've never been, but yes,
it was tiny, so small. And I was like the third person away from the stage, and like right where there was a mosh pit, and then there were like a few people pressed up to the stage, and I was right there. I remember what I was wearing, and I took a screen grab of it, and I showed my boys. I'm like, that's me.
There you go. All right, two more.
90s.
Yeah, there you go. Two more. Okay, best city to see a live performance in.
Are we talking club or arena?
Club.
New York, probably.
Okay. All right. If there's one artist you can meet, who would it be?
Oh man, that is so hard.
I know. It is a hard question for anyone who's a music fan, for sure, right? But
one artist that I could meet.
There's that guy that you're sitting at a bar at the club. Show comes up, and it's like you turn your head to the left, and you're like, "Holy shit!" So I
might as well go with the theme and just say Mike Ness from Social Distortion, just to be consistent, but it's probably true.
All right.
Yes. I mean, or maybe Mick Jagger.
So that was going to ask the question of Stones or the Beatles.
Oh, Stones, hands down. Never. I feel bad for not appreciating the Beatles because they're so historic, but I never.
There's songs that I appreciated the Beatles, but at the end of the day, I'm a Stones fan. More of a Stones fan.
What I realized with my appreciation of rock is that it always is more about the raw aspect of rock than either an experimental pushing the limit. I mean, like AC/DC, like you don't get more like just basic, like it's basic really at the end of the day.
Right.
And the Stones in the 70s were like, where they had the most raw sound was my favorite time period for them. And you can probably say that for Led Zeppelin too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, David, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you tonight. Thank you for joining, for sure. And
thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no. And, back when maybe pandemic land goes away, because we're both in Chicago, we should actually meet up for a drink and meet in person. So,
yeah. All right. So we'll get past lockdown. We'll make it happen.
All right.
What neighborhood do you live in, by the way?
I'm in Tinley Park. So I can stumble home.
Right. I was going to say, you're talk about live shows. You're right there.
Yeah. Some days, I can hear them. So when we can have them, but I am a stone's throw. I can stumble home if I need to. I haven't, but I could if I wanted to. So, but yeah, I mean, Chicago's a great music city, amongst other cities as well. But yeah, I'm down in the southwest suburbs. So
if you had said outdoor venues or arenas, I might have said Chicago more so than clubs.
Yeah, Chicago does have some great outdoor venues. I mean, even if you want to just, they're all over the place, right? But nothing is great from an acoustic perspective, but just the atmosphere. I mean, you can go to Northerly Island and just have the backdrop of the city right on the lake.
That's where I saw Social Distortion.
Right, or you can do Ravinia, and do your wine and cheese and still get great outdoor, or you can still do Soldier Field, which I saw U2. I've seen U2. I've seen Bon Jovi. I've seen a number of concerts there that are
all the Stones there when they came.
Yeah, exactly. You just can't get any better than just being outdoors in the spaceship, as we say, right? So, thanks again for joining. I really appreciate your time tonight. Great conversation. Look forward to having many more with you. And thanks for joining the podcast.
All right.